What if Hariyama was in Gen 1 OU? Now, normally, fighting types are pretty straightforward when it comes to putting them in Gen 1 OU. Either they are just as bad as the ones that already exist in Gen 1, you add a crazy overpowered fighting move, like, let's say, Close Combat, which just breaks the game, or you have something like Galarian Zapdos, or probably like Infernape, where you have a fighting type that's incredibly fast, which means it can do stuff before the psychic types can just destroy it. Hariyama here is a very weird case, because it's none of the above. It's not completely worthless like the fighting types in Gen 1. It's definitely not a fast, frail cannon. And it doesn't have a super strong fighting move either. Like no busted signature like Thunderous Kick. However, what Hariyama does have is pretty insane bulk, as well as an interesting fighting move. I don't know who really remembers this, but in Gen 3, Arm Thrust was a signature move of Hariyama. And it's basically a better version of Pin Missile. Because Pin Missile in Gen 1 is 85 accuracy and 14 base power points. So not a lot different. But I think the accuracy alone makes it so much better. And interesting. Because I guess by default, this is now the best fighting move in the game. And with a Pokemon with 120 base attack, that's pretty good actually. Or I say good, but just like regular Pin Missile, it's very unreliable. A really good chance you can get a high roll. Or actually not even that good. I meant to say it does a lot of damage if you get a high roll. However, even then, not as much as you might think. How many arm thrusts do you need to KO Tauros? Take a guess. The correct answer is, you need exactly 5 on a critical hit, because that was my first replay. And yeah, when you put it like that, arm thrust probably isn't that great, but I do think it's worth experimenting with, especially for Chansey exactly, because even if it's only really hitting Chansey really hard, that alone could potentially make it worth it. Obviously, Hariyama just has a great move pool either way. Alongside R Thrust, there's Body Slam, Hyper Beam, Earthquake. Earthquake probably going to be its main attacking move. Just good consistent damage and something that can help you hit Gengar. But you also have... I'm going to put a space here so it's easier to see. But you also have Rest, Substitute Rock Slide, and Surf and Ice Punch. The last two aren't really that good because of your horrible 40 special attack. So it's hitting about as hard as I believe Rhydon special coverage. And there's a reason why we don't use Surf for the Rhydon mirror. But Rock Slide could be good. It can help you hit Zapdos and Jinx, which you're probably going to lose either way, but it's something that they need to at least respect. And what's probably going to be better is Rest and Substitute. As you can tell by its stats, it has incredibly good bulk. Because comparing it to, like, let's say Snorlax, let's put this in Gen 1 real quick. Like, Snorlax, I believe, has very similar bulk, because it has 160 HP, which is a lot better. But base 65 special and special defense, not that much different, really. So even in the worst case scenario, Hariyama here can kind of be just a, like, I don't think it's right calling it a second Snorlax, because you don't have that very valuable normal stab, or the versatility when it comes to special moves. But it's kind of like Snorlax at home, but it's a Snorlax at home that can hit Chansey, other Snorlax, and even Tauros super effectively. So I think it has its uses. I'm not sure if it would be OU, because if your main thing is mostly using Arm Thrust, obviously that is the safest psychic switch in the game. But at the same time, I feel like if you're switching Chansey out, that's already pretty valuable. And if you go for a body slam, or if you're like using like a set that just stalls out Chansey, could be pretty good. Because I forgot to say it, but with 144 HP, your Chansey needs 2 seismic toss to break the sub. So even something like Rest Substitute Arm Thrust Earthquake, a set that's only for fighting Chansey for the most part, that sounds decent. At the very least, I think it's very safe to say Hariyama is the best fighting type in Gen 1 OU by far. Even Machamp doesn't really have much that can go on. You can maybe argue Poliwrath, but I think Hariyama has the bulk to where you'll actually consider it. It'll be more than just a little bit of a gimmick. My guess is that Hariyama is going to be an underuse. And an underuse, I couldn't really tell you how it would do. It wouldn't really appreciate Dodrio. I'm not sure if Clefable runs Psychic. I'm sure Persian really doesn't like being hit with Arm Thrust. Neither would Kangaskhan. I'm sure with Earthquake you have the bulk to take on Golem and more importantly Dugtrio. Not to mention it can hit Tentacool super effectively. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell just how good Hariyama would be. But it's definitely interesting. Now, for those of you who know, with this channel, I have a bit of a hate relationship with Pin Missile. But I'm not sure why Arm Thrust really interests me. I guess I should maybe be surprised with the results. But speaking of which, I guess I should show you those right now. Starting off with the boy himself, Tauros. The first replay I did, like I said, was a crit Arm Thrust which Oko Tauros. But obviously with base 50 speed, you're not getting that a lot. But with 3 Arm Thrusts, that's already a 3-hit KO. Pretty decent damage, I would say. With just 2, it does about 26. So that's... But even that's still a 4th. Is it better to go for Earthquake? Probably. But then again, unlike Pin Missile, where you just have a 50% chance to miss, it does even less damage. Not to mention going up an abysmal attack stat. Hariyama has a real attack stat of 120. It has Stab with its super effective move. It's more accurate. So even with the worst of the worst, doing a 4th is already decent damage. And having the ability to high roll and get as much as 3, 4, or even 5, I think it's worth it. In my opinion, at least. It's not spectacular, but I do honestly feel like it might be worth going for. Or maybe not, because with these next 2 Snorlax replays, you're going to see just how likely it truly is for Arm Thrust to hit. But like, even then, like, that was... Both those were 3 times, and that did about like more than half of Snorlax's health. That too is also pretty decent damage. This next one's going to be with Reflect Wax. I forgot to make a replay for Reflect Chansey, but to be honest, given how the Chansey replay went, I don't think it's too much of a big deal. Because TLDR, with Rest and Substitute, you're just really good at stalling out Chansey. But you'll see here, you'll see just how many times Hariyama can really hit with Arm Thrust. And I think, if I remember correctly, it said that it's a 1 in 3 chance to either hit twice or thrice. And then it's a 1 in 8 chance to hit 4 or 5 times. So, maybe when you word it like that, it's not the best odds. But if we're being completely fair here, Reflect Wax beats Hariyama either way. Because Earthquake isn't doing much. Maybe you can fish for Freeze with Ice Punch, but that sounds really bad. So Arm Thrust is probably the best move anyways, since you might as well try to fish for those like hitting 4 or 5 times. Not to mention, while not the most common thing in the world, if Hariyama does get a critical Arm Thrust, especially if it hits a lot of times, that's gonna be huge. Literally the entire reason we use Double Kick on Jolteon instead of a moveset of like Thunderbolt, Thunder Wave, Rest, Stand Attack is because if you do get a crit, the way it works in Gen 1 is that all of the moves do double power. So double kick has basically it's basically 260 base power super effective moves, hitting anything like a Chansey. So if you get that with arm thrust, it could be pretty good. But not likely, but even then, Snorlax had to use Reflect, had to use Rest a few times, and it needed to set up max special, and even then, arm thrust put a lot of work in. So don't sleep on it. And it does even better against Chansey, which probably doesn't even need, since with the substitute alone, it can completely wall out Chansey. Thunder Wave's annoying, and it's the only reason why you might lose sometimes, but at that point, that's more so just paralysis being paralysis in Gen 1. So while you're watching Hariyama and Chansey go at it, may I please remind you that most of you are not subscribed, and I am currently at 974, and I want to try to make it to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the month. At the time of recording this, it is very late. It's almost 4:22, but not quite. I honestly do think that I can make it in time. It's a week, but I do think I can get to 1,000 subscribers in a week. But I need your help. So if you want to help me, I'd really appreciate it. Like the video and subscribe. And don't be like that Chansey. But see what I mean when I talk about just high rolling? That Chansey was at, how much was it again? It was at 69%. Nice. And hitting 4 times did so much damage. Like, literally, like, it did 70%. So while it's rare, it's one of those things where if it does happen, it could, in of itself, just completely determine the game. I might be being biased here. I can admit that maybe I'm overselling it a little too much. This is definitely a Pokemon that probably should just be tested in Generation Jumble. Because so far in Season 2, Iron Hands is doing great. And I think Hariyama deserves a test to see how good it would be. It doesn't matter if it's Iron Hands or Hariyama though. Obviously Zam absolutely destroys. The only way you win that matchup is paralyzing with Body Slam and going for Hyper Beam. But that doesn't really sound too good. And then Cloyster with Blizzard can 3-hit KO you. And I was curious to see what is better between Arm Thrust and Rock Slide. Like, they do around similar damage anyways, assuming it's like a 3-hit or a 2-hit with Hariyama. So Arm Thrust is probably better since you might do more damage. And just hitting 2 is less damage than Rock Slide, but at the same time it's more accurate. Doesn't matter either way though, since Cloyster will always have the bulk to take it out pretty easily. However, it can't exactly rest, because the Cloyster does go for rest. If Hariyama gets lucky with Arm Thrust, that can actually just put Cloyster in serious damage. The same cannot be said for Executor. It doesn't really care about Body Slam or Hyper Beam. So it doesn't even need to put you to sleep. It just 2-shots you. Which I guess is one problem when it comes to how Hariyama is designed. It's designed with a lot of HP, but when so many of the best Pokemon are Psychic types, or just using Psychic moves like you see with Gengar here, it can be a bit of an issue. And that's why I think Hariyama, while pretty good in having a niche, for the most part is just going to be a UU Pokemon. I think it'll be pretty great there, but yeah, a lot of Pokemon are just really strong against it. Jolteon 2 can also be pretty good if it gets some crits, but I'm not sure why you would try to fish for those crits against a Hariyama, especially a healthy one. Like, why would you even have to fight in the first place? Wouldn't make any sense. Next off is Jinx, and you don't even need to put it to sleep. It's already a 2-shot with Psychic. Rock Slide does a lot of damage, and I guess if you paralyze it with Body Slam, you might be able to kill it. But not even sure if that's worth it. Probably not, because of how good Jinx's great crit rate is. But I guess it's a Psychic type you have the best matchup against. But even that completely depends on what your moveset is. Both Earthquakes are 3-hit KO on each other. Didn't bother going over Surf or Ice Punch, because Hariyama kinda suffers from 4 move swat syndrome. It wants Or actually, no, it just does. I'm not sure if Arm Thrust is going to be worth it at the end. So I guess you guys can tell me in the comments if it's worth it. And I guess as future season of Generation Jumble will decide. But for now, I'm going to say it wants Arm Thrust, maybe for Chansey, but the other Fighting Weak Pokemon is a nice bonus. It wants Earthquake as a main attacking move, Rock Slide for coverage, Body Slam for paralysis, probably Hyper Beam for good damage, and it definitely wants Substitute and Recover, or not Recover, Rest, since it just gives it so much more longevity. But it can't run all of them. So the special moves, Surf and Ice Beam, I just don't even think are worth considering, because they're barely gonna hurt, and you already would rather better coverage for other things. But I guess for the Slowbro matchup, Ice Punch would technically be your best move, since the only shot you have is to freaking freeze it. Good luck with that. It's probably not gonna go all in your favor, and Slowbro is just always gonna wall you. It's not even funny. In fact, let's just skip this, because we know how this is gonna end. We already know. And yes, Surf is an Oko when you have Max Special. No one's surprised by that. Just like how no one's gonna be surprised when I tell you Starmie does a pretty good job at defeating Hariyama. Psychic is a 2-hit KO, so good luck. Maybe you can paralyze it, but Hyper Beam, I'm telling you right now, is not gonna kill in that range. So it's just completely unwinnable. And the same is basically the same for Zapdos, because despite having a really high HP stat, Drill Peck does a lot of damage. Like, it is literally a 2-hit KO. Meanwhile, Rock Slide's only a 3-hit KO. Not very good odds. Not really. The Zapdos can always win that. And some sets, like, I generally do think, if you're using Hariyama, you're better off just doubling down on just finding the normal types. So I do think that Arm Thrust, Earthquake, Substitute and Rest might be the best set. I might be wrong about that, but if that's the case, then you just lose even harder. It's not even funny. Well, here is the tier list, and I honestly was kind of expecting more, but I think that's on me. Even though it has a fighting move that's, for once, pretty consistent-ish, because even if it's only hitting twice, that's still basically hitting as hard as a... Well, no, it's weaker than a Double Kick, but it's... I would say it's probably better than Double Kicks, though. Definitely better than Double Kick on Jolteon, who still probably uses the move, because what else is Jolteon gonna run? Maybe it might run Pin Missile, so it supports Hariyama better. Probably not. So, a lot of stuff are unwinnable, and a lot of things that could go either way. I think most of them will probably be Hariyama, outside of, like, Rhydon 1v1. Hard to say. But yeah, underuse, there, I imagine it would be pretty good. But even in OU, I think it's going to have its niche. I think it's worth using for teams. You need to look out for it, because if you're not prepared for it, it could be annoying. But nothing too spectacular. But I do think it would be a well-designed fighting type for Gen 1. And I would say it's probably better than Poliwrath. Because even though it's super psychic weak, at least it doesn't need to use submission. And maybe I should have gone over... Actually, I don't even remember if it learned submission. It probably does, but... Let me just check real quick. It probably has Will Kick too. I know it has Seismic Toss, but... I'm just curious. It doesn't look like it. I don't remember seeing... I don't think I saw Will Kick either, now that I think about it. Not that it matters too much, because it's only base 50 speed. So yeah. It basically is using the best fighting move it could. I don't have much else to say, really. It's just a cool Pokemon. But what do you think? Do you think Hariyama would be pretty good in Gen 1 OU? And the most important question I have, is Arm Thrust even worth it? Or would you rather go for more coverage? Let me know in the comments below. But until next time, this is Groundback, and I look forward to hearing from you.